Everyone, welcome to my channel, Venus Visions. In today's video, we're going to discuss Kali Ma, the esoteric secrets of the divine feminine, the goddess of time, death, birth, and compassion. When I do speak of these divine feminine archetypes that are found in different historic forms and in different methodology, I always have a hard time saying their name. I like to get deep into the actual archetype itself, how it can relate to us, how we can awaken it in our subconscious mind. Because if you dig deeper and if you search deeper into these spiritual paths, you realize that they are deeply embedded into our psyche. And so I like to connect into that energy and kind of just feel the energy, the divine feminine way of learning and teaching, which is to actually go directly and try to embody that energy, welcome that energy, and just allow it to teach you whatever it is. So I thought that was perfect for Kali Ma because she is so misunderstood yet so magnetic, and a lot of people are very connected to her energy. So I'll give you a little bit of the background of the kind of the stories, but you can find that anywhere. And then I'll jump right into how I usually do these videos, which is connect into the secret of the esoterical metaphorical meanings that a lot of people are not mentioning, and how they can relate to us and how we can use them to our benefits. So kind of the story, how Kali Ma came into fruition. And again, this spirit is shown in other forms and other timelines, such as such as Sekhmet from ancient Egypt. And if you haven't watched, please go watch my video on her. And it's simply the same story, but different details depending on where this energy was, depending on the cultural and the time frame of where it showed up. Same thing with West Africa. Her story can be mirrored with Oya, the divine goddess of war, the warrioress goddess, right? So the name Kali Ma and this depiction of her as this ferocious goddess with all these skulls on her head, and she has a head with blood coming out of it, and she's just has her tongue out, and her hair is crazy, which is in Indian culture, really, a woman, a married woman is supposed to have her hair kept and usually braided, but she was a married divine feminine, and her hair was just crazy. She's often seen as like naked and just in her, that ferocious, destructive energy that you can find anywhere in nature, that volcano that just comes, or that tornado. Getting back to by the way, I want to make it clear that I'm not going to speak of her precisely from a Hindu religious standpoint or a Buddhist religious standpoint, because in Buddhism she shows up as well, and she could be considered the Black Tara. Because I do feel like a lot of religions have made it into this box, and it kind of lost a lot of the esoteric, like magical sauce, if you will. And I am going to speak to her as from the divine feminine path, because there's a spiritual path that is called the divine feminine path, where they connect with different divine feminine archetypes or divine masculine archetypes from all over the world, and try to learn about this same archetype through different lenses from these traditions, because it gives us a deeper understanding of who they are. But still, it's a very mysterious path, and so that's why. And I also feel like if you've watched my videos, you realize I've said this many times, I do feel like that since we are evolving right now, the spiritual knowledge and how it is perceived to us is very evolved. And so a lot of people would be in one tradition, but now they have all these different forms of the same energy that they've connected with come to them from different traditions and different countries. And so it's all connected now. It's like they're all here, spirit is all here, and they're showing up in these different, creative forms to kind of help us see the thread of connectiveness in our humanity. Because it's like, how do people in India, at this year have the same story as, people in West Africa or in Brazil, thousands of years later, et cetera, et cetera. And it helps us connect and be like, wow, we really are one. So I think that's beautiful right now, that we are going through this evolution, and we're starting to tap into these different forms of the same energy in different traditions. And so I just wanted to make it clear that I am speaking about Kali Ma from the divine feminine spiritual path. Okay, so in the divine feminine spiritual path, they do reference a lot of Hindu stories because, again, like I mentioned in a lot of the Egyptian methodologies that I've spoken about, a lot of the secret metaphors are in these stories. So the fruition, how she came about in the Hindu stories, there are many stories of, the start, but the one that I resonate with the most and a divine feminine spiritual path resonates with the most is there was this demon. I'm not even going to try to butcher his name. I'll put it somewhere. But basically, the gods and the goddesses at the time were at war. The world was going to just end, and there's this demon that needed to go away. And so they called the warrior goddess, the most powerful one, which is Durga Ma. And she came and she had a hard time. She defeated him. And then the final demon came about. And this one was able to, whenever he bled and his blood drops touched the ground, he would multiply. I guess thousands of him would multiply. And so Durga Ma got so angry that from her third eye, she was able to channel Kali Ma. So Kali Ma was born out of Durga Ma's third eye. So what does that mean from a spiritual, esoteric point of view? Well, it has a lot of deep, deep meanings, and there are people who are, who practice and they sit with this energy for years and years and try to understand the different esoteric meanings and how they can relate to us. But I'm not gonna get that deep into it. But for me, the meaning was that Durga Ma is essentially Kali and vice versa. And so this energy just represents the same divine feminine mother in her different forms. And so when mother realized that the world was going to end, her world was going to end, or a physical mother, like a human mother that loves her child and somebody's, endangering that child, she has this ferocious, natural energy to her that will come out, this anger, this rightful anger, but there's a healthy anger kind of that comes out during this protective and this warrior's process. And so Durga Ma in that energy transforms into Kali Ma. And there are other stories where, even Parvati, which is a goddess of love, divine, a divine goddess of love and beauty, and she too transforms into Kali Ma. And so we have these different stories even in the tradition that show how they can transition into one another. And it's same thing with all the other traditions, and going back to ancient Egypt, because I made a couple of videos on them. Like I said, Isis can represent all of them. Heteru, she can represent Sekhmet, all of them. So same thing with Kali Ma. Okay, so she was birthed out of that, and instead of, the blood touching the ground, she literally would drink the blood, and she got so bloodthirsty. But this was like the very angry version of her, to the point that there was no stopping her. And again, this story relates to the ancient Egyptian story of Sekhmet, where she was so angry at the world and she started killing everything after she finished killing the demon. And the same thing with Kali Ma. After she was done, she was out to destroy the world because her anger got to that point, in that volcano. You can't stop the volcano. You can't stop the tornadoes. You just gotta wait. So they had to trick in the ancient Egyptian story, in the Sekhmet story, they kind of had to trick her with drinking wine because it looks red and it looks like blood, and she was so bloodthirsty. And Kali Ma's versions, there are different versions, but the most popular one, and if you've seen her depiction, she's always standing on her husband, Shiva, and she has her tongue out. And so that represents the stories that she was out to kill everything, and then her divine masculine, her divine equal kind of stepped in and wanted to save the world. And the only way he knew how to do that, it wasn't to fight her. It wasn't, and I think that's so beautiful. And it's a lot of the stories, it's not even like what is said, but like what isn't said that is missed, and that has a lot of beauty in it. And I think a lot of people miss it, which is when he went to stop her, and all the gods were like scared, they were like, no, no, don't try to stop her. And he was like, I know how to stop her. He knew exactly how to calm the divine feminine. And he laid there. He laid there in love with her. He loved her form as that. He loved all of her shadows, right? He loved her aspect as Parvati, and he loved her aspect as Kali Ma. And he just went out there with love, and he was out there laughing and smiling. And when she looked down and she realized she was stepping on her beloved, you know, that tongue, a lot of Hindus say that is done when a person realizes it's like a mistake is done. And so her tongue was out at that moment when she realized this, and that was the only thing that could calm her down. Okay, so now let's get into a deeper meanings of her. And I have this Kali Oracle here that I just purchased recently, and I love it so much. It is by Alana Fairchild, if you can see. And there's a lot of images on her that are so beautiful, but also like very modern. And I think they're beautiful. But Kali has a lot of forms, a lot of different forms. And usually when she is depicted as blue, that's when she's in action. But to keep it simple, we're only going to speak of the one form right now, because this is kind of like an introductory. I'm introducing her into my channel, basically. So Kali Ma represents time. She represents time itself. And this is, again, another form of her mysteries of how can she represent time? What does that even mean? Well, I'm not speaking of the time like the clock, because we know that the clock is a man-made invention, right? Same thing with the calendars today. Calendar is, we use the Gregorian calendar, which is created by a man. I don't know I forgot his first name, but last name is Gregory. Excuse me, English is not my first or even second language. But I have like a hard time with a couple words here and there, and my accent does come out here and there, but as long as you guys understand information. She is time in the fact that she was the first one. She was the first one before any of the manifestations of the god and goddesses that we know in the Hindu culture or pantheon today. She was kind of that womb, right? That black womb. So her skin is black. And I love that, because the black represents the subconscious mind where everything is created. It also represents the universe, right? The universe where all of us exist. We're all floating and moving along in the universe. And in that universe, everything is created there. And in that blackness, that's where everything is created. Also, the black holes, she represents the energy of the black hole. So that's how mysterious she is. If you realize the theme between all of these esoteric archetypes that I speak about is that when they are related to certain things in nature, that's the more we can understand them is how we can relate to them. She's related to the universe itself, and so that's how mysterious she is. She's related to the black hole, which even today's science that can't really possibly explain the phenomena of a black hole. And I remember even when I was younger, just learning about it, I was just like, what? I was so curious about that. I was just kind of scared. I'm like, imagine if it just like swallows us. But really, that's kind of her energy. She absorbs. She kind of, and if you work with her on a for shadow work, because she works with people for shadow work, and her teachings or her path or her energy is not like, it can be very tough, especially if it's something that a block or a shadow that needs to go. She will step in, and you have to be kind of like that tough love, right? But she has a very beautiful motherly, nurturing side to her as well that not a lot of people have been able to connect to or even speak about. And it makes me so sad, but I think you have to go through kind of like her own initiations before she shows that side of her to you. But for me, I was able to see her as like the most kindest, beautiful, divine feminine, but even in her beauty, right? And the depictions that she came to me, and like it's not like I was seeing a human form, but it's hard to explain the mystery. So that's kind of like her energy, really. That's why she's connected to like trance states. So a lot of people that work with her energy, they would go into trance, and it's just like, or like they're high. They're almost not even in this. They're in between worlds. So when she came to me, I was already like in the darkness, right? I was connected with her energy before then, and she was like ferocious and like strong. But the time that I really connected with her the most, that like when she showed up to me as that loving mother, was like during my grief period when my mom passed away. And it was like one of those nights, right? Because I had a lot of those weird nights. Some of them I was like numb. I was deep in the underworld, and I wanted to face it. Like I was like, I'm not gonna run away from it. I have this chance right now to be able to initiate into this grief and let it teach me, because when you give into these types of world initiations, it can really bring you so much wisdom. And that's really what her energy is. That's why it's like it can be scary for people because they don't want to go there, right? But once you but it's part of life, right? We cannot escape the shadows and the darkness of life. Her energy is to prepare you and to be like, for you to see it as not all terrible, actually. So she came to me at that one of the nights when I was very angry, but I was crying, and I was like, why did this happen? And and I felt her energy like I was in trance. And for me, trance state, I can understand it really easily because I grew up in North Africa, where I've seen people go into trance at weddings because our wedding songs are very like spiritual. And even the spirits that we call in these wedding songs can be connected to these deities if you do a lot of history research. But I've seen women, like since I was a little girl, I've seen women just go into this trance, and it wasn't like a big deal, right? So when it happened with her, oh my God. And after that, I think I did a meditation. I don't even know, but I just know the feeling I felt, and I know the vision I saw. So, and she was the most beautiful, nurturing mother, just like gorgeous, but very loving, very protective. And it could be because I was missing that motherly energy at that point that I was able to tap into that archetype that I said earlier in the video that lives within all of our consciousness, right? It's an energy. It represents the divine mother. And the same thing in Hindu traditions, she is considered the divine mother, the mother of the gods. And like I said, she represents time because she is the beginning. She is the universe. She is the womb, right? The dark womb where everything is created. She is the dark depth of the oceans where it's so mysterious, but it's so powerful. And a lot of people can be scared of this energy, you know, understandably, right? People are scared of the unknown, but also she represents, can be your shadow and your own ego points. She'll show you that. She's kind of like a mirror. And a lot of people subconsciously know this, and they're not ready to face those aspects of themselves. And so they don't even mess with this energy at all. And it can be very intense, but it is so rewarding. She's very protective. So yes, people work with her for protective work. In a lot of pagan traditions, her energy is used for, you know, to remove any evil or you know, or people who are initiated into her teachings or consider her their selves like the children of Kali Ma. She really does, this energy does protect over them. I also know a lot of Indians who are Hindu who kind of like shy away from this energy, or almost like they're embarrassed of her dark aspect, which is not bad. Dark does not equal bad. Like that, I don't know. I think it's through programming and all these things, but mystery doesn't mean bad. Not understanding something, it's powerful. It's scary in the form of like respect, right? You have to respect. There's clear boundaries of this energy. You have to come with your best self. You can't use a victim excuses. And I think part of the human consciousness, they understand this. When you're approaching this energy that's like a mirror to you, you better come as your best self. You know, your little excuses of victimhood, they're not gonna work with her. So, and the first goddess really that I started learning about is Kali Ma, and she kind of came to me like I've connected with a lot of them without knowing it, and like I've been to different like actual sacred places that are dedicated to specific goddesses that I didn't even know until like years later when I started learning about this stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, they pulled me there and they pulled me here and this one pulled me here. But the one that I started to like consciously learn about was Kali Ma, and I think I was listening to a podcast, and I had just gotten to Nigeria for a wedding, and I was so excited, and I was in, Yoruba land, which is in Lagos. Yoruba land, if you don't know, that's where, Oya and Oshun and these different other goddesses and Yomoja are, that's where their origin is. And I was getting ready, like I had just landed, and we were all like friends from college. It was kind of like a reunion. We're all heading to our friend's wedding there, and I'm like getting ready and listening to this podcast, and like we ended up going to a river in Yoruba land. Like, come on now, I'm at a river, which Oshun is connected to rivers. Let me not get distracted, but yeah, all these goddesses, right? I was there in the heart of the divine feminine world, kind of listening to this podcast, and they were talking about the 10 Devis, or the Hindu goddesses, in their aspect. And the one I remember connecting to the most was the Oya. Oya is again the Yoruba mirror version of Kali Ma. And I remember I was like, I feel very connected to this energy. At the point, I didn't remember even her name afterwards, but I remember like how they described her. I was like, this is it. Like and then even in the description, they're kind of like, yeah, she's kind of scary and this and that. And they're trying to make excuses for her, but still. And fast forward, after that trip, I went to Egypt. That's when I had my whole, I went there not for spiritual purposes again, but ended up, literally feel like I got initiated. And when I was there, I met a friend who was Indian, and I was telling him I'm like, oh yeah, I'm learning about these divine feminine goddesses and like Kali. And he's like, no, that's not the one you like. And I'm like, no, that's the one I like the most. That's the one I feel very connected to her. And he was like, are you sure? Like, I think you met Lakshmi. And I was like, no, I don't know. What is her name? The one that represents time, like she's black. And he's like, I don't know which one represents time. But anyways, fast forward, now that I've like really worked with her and have been lucky enough to have this energy be around and kind of just show me how to be brave, courageous, and how to face my own ego, my own shadow, and how to destruct the inner demons and fight the inner demons within so that we may be free. I just like everything just started to make sense to me. But yes, she's also the most popular one. But I just wish a lot of the Hindus or the Indians were not as embarrassed. Like, not everybody, of course. There are ones that are just straight out. They come out and they're like, this is who Kali is, unapologetic, because really that's her energy. She is unapologetic. Like, people who really work with this energy, they will swear, they will be their full authentic self, because it's like, this is not to make people feel good. Like, if you want to learn about this stuff, this is what it is. I know a lot of people, they like to pander when it comes to spirituality, and they change the stories or like pick and choose what's cute and what's trending. And like, no, with this type of stuff, it can get very dangerous because it has to do with a lot of mental and ego traps. And so instead, just be open and allow it. This is what it is. Allow it to teach you what it is. And otherwise, stay away, right? But if you're ready and prepared, this energy can totally transform your life. So she's also the goddess of death. That's why she's considered the goddess of death, because she represents the death, the destruction. And it's said in the Hindu tradition, she's the last one. So she's the first one that was there before anything. that means she's also the goddess of birth, right? She created all. She is the divine feminine mother. And that's an aspect that not a lot of people pick up on, right? They just see the images of her with death, where that's in nature everywhere. That aspect of death and birth, rebirth, right away, right away, right away. That's her energy. That is the divine feminine. The womb doesn't just give birth. Whenever you have your period, that's the Kali Ma energy of like releasing what is no longer needed. Your body doesn't need these walls, right? Because you're not pregnant. Release it in a bloody, destructive, natural way, right? That's how nature is. We cannot pick and choose, right? We would love to say that volcanoes are ferocious, but when they see a human, they move out of the way, and volcanoes are cute. And we cannot say that tornadoes are, like they don't hurt humans if you're not in their way. They don't hurt anything and destruct everything. You can't say the ocean and the earthquakes, right? That is nature. At the same time, the black soil that comes after the volcano, when a volcano burns everything, and I mentioned this in one of my, I think, Bastet video, where Hawaii, right? The island Hawaii did not exist. It was literally a rock under the water. And there was a volcano that came out. There was a underwater, right? And it popped up, right? And that's when the rock came up. And because of that volcano, it left behind black soil. And a black soil is the fertile soil. It is where everything grows. And as a result, we have this beautiful, the most luscious island if you've been to Hawaii. And it's funny because they also have a divine feminine goddess of the volcanoes, which she is also has a lot of similarities with Kali Ma, the destructive goddess of death and birth. And so she represents that black soil where everything is created, right? And every time, so if you are a philosophical person and likes to learn about different esoteric things, about why certain, how the universal laws work and why this happens, because I don't know, you want to know how the creative force, the God, right, the creator of all, kind of has this creative energy, how it thinks, how it manifested itself in these different forms, then you realize that every birth is a death of something, and every death is a birth of something. Whenever you have a breakup, a death of a relationship, there's always something within you that is born. Even when you, again, as above, so below, as within, so without. These things are like found everywhere, right? Even when you have a physical death of someone that you love, a part of you is also dying with them, but the old you, but there's a new you that is born. And I have to think about when my mom passed away. I remember my best friend at the time, she was around me a lot, and she did go through the same thing when her father passed away. And I just asked her, she was the closest person I can relate to. And I was like, how does it feel? And I remember her saying, I don't know how to explain it, but your old self is like, it's like there's a new self. It's like there's an old self that existed when her father was alive, and then there's this new life, this new self. So there's always a birth whenever there's a death, and you can always harness that energy if you don't fall into, the victim mindset. Of course, grief is important. Of course, crying. Like I want to make a video on the divine feminine path. We don't run away from these different emotions. In fact, we honor them. That's why they are shown to us in these different archetypes. Kali Ma represents the anger. She has that part of her that has that. She has the part of her that represents the unconditional love that is so wise that it understands the importance, and that even loves death itself, because it understands how that is part of the cycle of life. Life and death are one. It's part of the life experience. Death is part of the life experience, right? There's nothing in nature that is natural, that is created by the creator of all, that doesn't go through that death process. Even every day, even when you go through a spiritual awakening, your old self kind of dies, or like an ego death, right? So don't fall into whenever you have a death in your life of something ending in business, a job, if you can really even through the grief, even through the confusion, if you can also like remember that there's a wisdom that can be birthed through this, and that if you like intentionally do it, it can birth something major, like major than if you just let it happen automatically on autopilot. So I use that whenever there's like a friendship ending. Naturally, a lot of women do this when they get over a breakup, like finally like get over it, right? They cut their hair and they feel better, they start to look good, they their new self is birth. And if you intentionally do that throughout these hard times in life, it can really change your life. It can really help you manifest so much success in your life where you see everything as divine, right? There's no good or bad, really. And even me, I still struggle with this concept on a human level, because there's certain things that I still feel like I want to hold on to and be like, this is bad. But I know on a higher level, I know and I believe this and I know it, but I just can't like make my brain understand it, that there really is no good or bad, really. And when you start to see everything that comes to you like lemons, right? And you can intentionally know and create lemonade from it. I mean, your life just blossoms. You can take every death, every bad part that happens in your life and see it as divine. And just through you, just you seeing it that way, it kind of just like, universal laws, the laws of attraction, it will help you manifest something just as great in its height. Some things you can do to connect with Kali Ma, there are definitely a lot of mantras. And again, that's why I said it's so important to try to understand these esoteric, especially the divine feminine energies, from like embodiment, from feeling them, from looking at different things in nature, like the black hole, how it sucks everything. Because you can do like the religious paths, or like what someone else will tell you, like some gurus who are, they dedicated their life to Kali Ma. Some of them are very wise and they know this stuff, right? They might give you a mantra to use, and some people can use certain mantras all their life, and there are people who use all these mantras all their life, yet barely anything is changing, barely anything is happening. And it's because it's like they're putting, it's going back to organized religion. With today's organized religion, it just feels very political. It loses this mysticism, and the mysticism is where the connection and the hidden aspect of how to connect with the divine is. Because to connect with God, to connect with the divine, is a very spiritual in a feminine way. It's not logical, it's not through doings, it's not through words. These things can be used as tools to better help us connect with the divine or bring in this energy. But if you're missing the secret sauce, the password, right? You can have a computer, but if you need to go on Google and you don't have Wi-Fi, it doesn't matter how many times you type in Google, how many times you wait. If you don't have internet access, you're unable to connect to that divinity, right? So people will just like listen to her mantras or say her mantras for years and do all these devotional work without really trying to connect to this energy, really facing themselves and seeing what it represents, which is ego death, wisdom, helping you understand that life and death are one, that there is no good or bad. All these things, there's so much when it comes to Kali Ma. And again, this is just like an introductory. She's the wild divine feminine, right? But this is just an introductory, like introducing her to my channel video to her. I would definitely love to make more videos and tell you different tools and things you can use to connect with her, like, this Kali Ma oil I have in front of me here. Yes, the mantras, like I said, you can connect with her with the mantras, but right now, the way we are evolving and spiritually to connect with these energies, it is better to try to embody them, try to feel them, try to understand their esoteric meanings, how they relate to us, what do these stories even mean? There's no point in learning all these different metaphorical stories that show up everywhere if you don't even try to inquire what do they even mean. Because if you look at just the outside stories, a lot of them, they're crazy, right, to the human brain from all over different cultures. I mean, some stories you have, like Isis, she has wings, she's depicted with wings, or Hathor, like one with the cow head, or a cow, even a cow herself, right? And all these stories of like Sekhmet's killing everyone, and then she drinks wine and she thought it was blood and she gets drunk. But these stories are all metaphors, and they can relate and teach us so much wisdom. So it's like, what do these stories mean? What do they teach us about ourselves, about this energy, and how does this energy manifest itself in nature, and how it manifests itself in us? Because as within, so without. And the more you learn about that, the more you learn who you are, know thyself. That kind of translate into the conclusion of all Hermetic teachings, or ancient Egyptian teachings, which is know thyself. And so if you're on a journey of exploration of knowing thyself, and you like to join it from this very fun path of the divine feminine, then Kalima, that archetype, is very important. It's so scary because a lot of people run away from this reality that death is real, that the ending of cycles are real, and it happens all over in nature. Every time you go through your period, that's an ending of a cycle. Every time the moon phases, that's an ending of a cycle. The different seasons, right? Every tree, there's an ending. It's like people don't want to see the divinity in these things because it's so scary. And that's why a lot of people are, even subconsciously, they don't even realize it. They think we're just scared of her energy because she's holding head and a skull. But it's like, are you really? Is it because of that image? I mean, yeah, the image can be scary, but that's not really what it is. A lot of people have this deeper fear, and it's subconscious. And I think it is because they're scared of themselves. They're scared of what they might find. They're scared of facing the truth, because sometimes these truths can hurt, right? Like, she made me face some blocks that I'm not ready to face, like some insecurities I have, but these blocks were ready to be faced because I had to transmute them in order for me to move on to my next level. Okay, so I guess that concludes this. I will make another video if you guys are interested in how I connect with her and different tools. And it's not just the mantras, but the mantras have been very powerful for me once I started to kind of like get the meat and understanding, and just like sit with her at times and be like, all right, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and the midnight is really her time. Tuesday is her day. Today's Tuesday. It's 11:25 p.m. right now. It's about to be midnight, so I can't wait to meditate on that. I like to just go outside. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope you learned a lot. Please describe if you have any connections to Kalima. Please write down below, comment, subscribe, and I would love to hear more of your conversations, topics. I do love these kinds of conversations, and I do like to engage with you all. And and welcome to all my new subscribers. So thank you all for your support and for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.